Right, I think we can start. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sheffield Chamber's latest edition of our COVID-19 Business Support Webinars. I'm Sam Christmas, the Commercial Partnerships Manager at Sheffield Chamber, and I just want to start by reminding everybody that the webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Chamber's YouTube channel shortly. If you've not already done so, please mute your microphones just to alleviate any background noise or interference. If you experience any problems with your internet speed, then turn your webcam off. This sometimes helps. So on to today's webinar, R&D tax credits. During these unprecedented times, it's more important than ever for businesses to access any grants, funding or tax credits that are available to you to help ease cash flow issues during the coronavirus outbreak. Research and development R&D tax reliefs are an attractive way for eligible companies to obtain substantial help with their cash flow. Therefore, Sheffield Chamber, pleased to have partnered with Shorts as Radius team, our preferred R&D partner, to help inform businesses of how to claim and ultimately ease your cash flow issues. I'm delighted to be joined by our keynote speaker, Daryl Hoy. Daryl is the Senior Manager at Shorts as Radius and will be on hand to answer any questions or concerns you may have about claiming R&D. So Daryl joined Shorts as Radius team, having previously worked at HM Revenue and Customs for 33 years. Whilst at HM Revenue and Customs, Daryl specialised in R&D tax credits as a tax inspector, bringing experience and knowledge of the R&D scheme that few other providers can rival. This enables him to maximise clients' claims whilst preparing a robust claim that meets HMRC guidelines. Daryl possesses extensive knowledge of HMRC enquiries and how to minimise the risk of any claim. If you or another provider have submitted an R&D claim and have an HMRC inquiry, Daryl can also help advise on this and guide you through the process. Having worked at HMRC for so long, Daryl understands their processes, and this is a valuable tool for Shorts and their clients. So Daryl, it's great to have you with us. Before I hand over to you, I just want to remind participants that questions can be submitted throughout by the chat box. I'd like to encourage as much engagement as possible. There is only a small group of us this morning. It is obviously quite a niche topic, so please use this opportunity to ask Daryl any questions. You can submit them anonymously if you'd like, where it says in the questions box to send to everyone. You can click on there and either send them directly to myself or Daryl. So without further ado, I'd like to start by introducing Daryl Hoy. Thanks, Daryl.
Hi, thanks, and good morning all. Thanks for joining. So yes, I'm Daryl. I've been at Shorts for nearly 3 years now. For those who don't know much about Shorts, we're sort of a mid-tier accountancy firm based in Sheffield and Chesterfield, employ about 140 people, and only a few are furloughed at the minute, so we're still operating reasonably well during these difficult times. So as Sam said, you know, R&D tax reliefs is a great way of accessing some cash for companies, particularly at the minute. So the R&D tax relief scheme has been came in 2000. So it's a pretty mature scheme, although some companies still haven't really heard of it. The scheme is open to, it can only be claimed by incorporated companies, and it's a tax relief by a corporate tax deduction to corporation tax, or it can be a payable tax credit if a company is loss making. So to qualify, as long as you're a small or medium enterprise, you will qualify. And if you're incurring qualifying R&D expenditure and have an R&D qualifying project, you will be able to claim. But having an R&D qualifying project is probably the trickiest condition to meet because it's based on guidelines which are sort of greyish, whereas most tax reliefs and allowances are fairly black and white. R&D is a bit more of a sort of greyish area where you're making a decision whether you've advanced technology or not. So we've tended to find that one of the biggest barriers for companies is that they don't feel they're innovative enough, and they think it's got to be sort of, you know, groundbreaking, people in white coats in laboratories doing R&D. The scheme was introduced to incentivise companies all over the country to innovate and to help UK PLC grow the economy. Companies grow, employ more staff, and obviously more exports, and just build UK economy. So it's very much part of their strategy, has been for the last 20 years, and there's no real sign of anything changing. You know, post Brexit, you know, the UK still got to compete with all the other countries in the world. All the other European countries have R&D schemes, or the vast majority. So to keep that competition going, they need to incentivise companies and give them the tax breaks to go out and take some risk, really, to you know, make a new product or develop some new technology that can help grow the country and help grow these companies. So there are two schemes. There's a scheme for small medium enterprises. There's also another scheme. So if you're a large company or you're an SME which received a grant, like an Innovate grant or some kind of grant from another body for the R&D project, you can also claim under a separate scheme, which is almost like getting double relief. You're getting a grant and you're getting some tax relief back on top of that. It's just not quite as advantageous as the SME scheme. It's something to think about and just make it a little bit more complex. But the way it can benefit companies, particularly at the minute, is, so particularly if you were a loss-making company, you could surrender the losses for an R&D tax credit straight away, and that brings some immediate cash back into the company. At the minute, HMRC are realising that cash flow is a serious issue for companies, and one way of doing that is making repayments faster to companies for corporation tax refunds, and particularly R&D tax credit refunds. So it would be a quick way of getting some money into the business. You can also get a corporation tax refund going back maybe up for 2 years. So R&D tax relief, you can go back to 2 previous accounting periods. So if you haven't previously claimed, potentially we could get claims in for you to cover 2 years. And again, the payments are being made quickly to get you some money back into your bank account, and these are cash flow issues. On average, for every £10,000 of R&D expenditure we identify, it would get you a tax saving of roughly £2,500. So if you identify 100,000, that's £25,000 of tax relief back. If you're a loss-making company, it could be as much as 3,300 for every £10,000. But you know, it's some real serious cash to get back into the business, which you can obviously then keep the company going during these difficult times, or help to pay with staff, or you know, different things. There's no barrier what you do with that money once you get it back from HMRC, so you don't have to put it back into a project or R&D. It can be spent throughout the company. So in terms of companies that can claim, it's pretty much any sector can claim, as long as you're an incorporated company and you're chargeable to corporation tax. And that doesn't mean you have to be paying corporation tax, but you're in the charge of corporation tax. It's open to you, the scheme. So predominantly we see that most companies we make claims for will be manufacturing companies, engineering, or technology companies who are developing new software platforms. But on top of that, you know, pretty much we see quite a big rise in sort of the food tech industry. So that's making new food sort of recipes, or whether it's the brewing industry. So we've done claims for gin distillers and local brewing companies who are making craft beers with very unusual flavours. Farming, agriculture, quite a few digital media companies, obviously sort of, you know, medical and pharmaceutical, you know, they're sort of almost Stonewall R&D companies. But across the whole sector of businesses, there shouldn't really be any barrier to you claiming. If you've got a project where you're innovating and doing something that no one else has done before, it's something new to market. So particularly, like obviously, you know, a new product is quite an easy area to identify as being an R&D project, because you're making something new. You know, new materials, new processes as well, where you've developed a new process within the business to make things, make an item quicker or cheaper, but still retaining the same quality or even better quality. is an area that's probably quite untapped. So really, I don't think, there's not really any real value to you be able to make an R&D claim as long as you're doing something that's over and above or new in the sector that you're working. So the guidelines say it's unlike other tax areas, there's just guidelines that overarch the R&D scheme. So these were written by the Department of Trade and Industry back in 2000. They're now a business, energy and industrial strategy department, but the guidelines haven't really changed in those last 20 years. And what the guidelines say is to qualify to be advancing or trying to advance science or technology through resolving scientific or technological uncertainties, and they are not readily deducible to a competent professional. So i.e. it's not blatantly obvious how you do it, and it's at least appreciably improving. So it doesn't have to be a complete advance. If you're appreciably improving the product and it be recognised by your peers in the sector you work in, that improvement is not it's a material improvement, then that project will qualify. The advance has to be in the sector that you work in, and not just an advance for the company. So sometimes we see with companies they've innovated to catch up with other people, but that knowledge is out there in the domain, so that wouldn't qualify. So when you're actually in the sector you work in, it's recognised that advance is an overall advance in the area. It applies in any of the sectors, and as I said before, process improvements particularly is an area, particularly like green energy and people moving to reduce their the emissions. That area of process improvements is a particularly good one to think about. In terms of the costs that you qualify, so once we identify there's a project that qualifies, one of the things to sometimes find is that actually people have got a qualifying project but haven't maybe got the costs. So costs that you qualify, the main cost is normally cost of labour. So this will be material costs, so this will be staff costs, so that will be internal salaries of people working on the projects, it'll be their wages, plus the employer's national insurance, and then an employer's pension contributions, but not dividends. So what we quite often see is that we see companies where directors it might only be a one-man band or a couple of people, and the directors who are not taking a wage out of the company or paying themselves in dividends, which dividends are not qualifying costs that's allowable in the scheme. So it's wages. You can also include the cost of people, third-party labour. So it might be that you're bringing in staff from a staff provider, which is okay, or you might be subcontracting part of the R&D out. So typically this could be like for testing, so you might have made something but you need some testing done on it. You haven't got the equipment in-house, so you send it to a third-party test in-house, and those costs qualify as well. The thing to note with those costs is when you're using a third-party contractor, you can only claim 65% of their costs, whereas if it was an internal staff cost, you could claim a full 100%. And that's just an arbitrary limit HMRC put in when the scheme was introduced to strip out the profit element that a contractor might charge you. It probably isn't 35% in these days, but we have to apply those rules. There's also materials used up in the project. So these are the materials, maybe making a prototype, or you're developing something of the materials that you've wasted, you've thrown them away, put them in a skip, they've all been used up. So it can't include any materials that are used in something that you then sell to somebody. When they're used in that development phase, stuck in the corner somewhere, all of those costs go into a claim. We also use as well costs of power, water and fuel. So on site, on your premises, in your factory, the cost of that heat, light and power can all go into a claim. And also software licenses. So again, that could be a CAD/CAM license, or some kind of Microsoft license. So if that's used in the development, that license costs will qualify. But note, what we do see a lot at the minute is companies might think like things like hosting costs or cloud data. That cost is not allowable at the minute, but currently HMRC are consulting over whether they should now allow those costs, because say rules were written back in 2000 and there was no such thing as cloud hosting in those days, or very little. But now most services, most companies will have data hosted in the cloud. So I think we're finally realising we need to relook at the scheme and maybe allow those costs, which would probably be, if they do allow them, it would probably be another year or so before they're allowed. But I think that's a positive step by HMRC to recognise that the world's changed. So they're the other costs that we can claim at the minute. So staff costs, use of other contractors, materials, heat, light and power, the software licenses, and they are all the costs you can claim for. Nothing else qualifies for the scheme. So in terms of making a claim, so a claim has to be made on a corporation tax return with a set of submitted accounts and a tax computation. So what we do is just submit an R&D technical report. So that report would identify the projects that you've worked on, the R&D projects, and detail what the background to the project was, what you were trying to achieve, what the advance in the science or technology was that you wanted to achieve, what the technical challenge was, which we call technical uncertainties, then how you've gone about resolving those uncertainties. Now, it doesn't matter if you didn't actually resolve those uncertainties, or even if the project was aborted because it ended up being too difficult to do, you can actually claim relief. So in some ways, failure, it's not a bad indicator, but the project was so difficult to do. That's why it qualifies an R&D project. But yeah, we'll put together a report which identifies all of those projects, or a sample of those projects. If it's a company that's doing 20 or 30 projects a year, we'll do a sample process, and that will go off with the tax return to HMRC. And it's also included a breakdown of all the costs that's been incurred during the project and what the effect of the tax position is. That report is not actually mandatory to be submitted to HMRC. So when I was at HMRC, I would quite often just see a number on the tax return and have nothing else to go on. So it made it a little bit difficult to know whether they've done R&D or not. And then it's really a bit of research into a company on the website that will look like they might be doing R&D. But most companies do submit a technical report, and obviously part of our role in working with clients is to do that technical report, which obviously you have sight of and HMRC have sight of, but they are the only people who see it. So it's not a document that's shared in the public domain at all. So you don't have to worry about anyone else in the public seeing that document. Let's say the time limit for making a claim is 2 years from the end of the accounting period. So currently we're in April. So if you were in April year end, so 30th of April 2018, we'd have until 30th of April 2020 to put a claim in. So we'd have to work really quickly on that claim. Most companies tend to be a 31st of March or 31st of December year end. But those 2 years, it's the same for any other tax relief. So R&D is no different. You've got 2 years to make a claim. Once those 2 years are up, that's it. It's out of time. There's no going back on it. HMRC have also, there is a digital form on the gov.uk website, which you can use. HMRC introduced it back in February 19. Very slow take up. I think only about 500 companies have used it so far. Way over a year now. But it is there. It's typically like a bit like in the passporting, radio buttons. It's very, it's quite a simple form to do. It has the same information which would be in the report, i.e. what's the project, what's the advance, the kind of areas that we cover in the report. So we've not tended to use it, because it's just double work for us. In terms of HMRC, in terms of the claims, so HMRC have been targeted to process claims, or 95% of claims, within 28 days of receiving them. That's a pretty quick turnaround. We're members of the R&D Credits Webinar, and we get regular updates, so weekly updates at the minute, and they're still maintaining that target. And they've also said that they're diverting resource to continue to make that target during these challenging times. So that's really good news, because you do tend to find sort of March is the biggest year then for them. Claims have gone up dramatically, and in previous years they've really struggled to maintain that target. But at the minute, they seem to be on top of it, and from claims that we've submitted, they seem to be being processed and repaid to our clients within those 28 days, pretty much. We do know that they've got staff working from home, a lot of staff working from home at HMRC, but it's not affected that. One of the key notes to think about is when we do a claim is we include the company bank details on the tax return. So payments are made via BACS, which speeds it up. Otherwise, it's a cheque, and the cheques tend to only get printed once a week, and it takes probably 2 weeks longer to reach your come through your letterbox, and the BACS payment, which is done within 3 days of them making processing the repayment. I think that's probably it for my bit about the process, how long it takes, what you need to do. I think so. Any questions, Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Really informative. I think I got the gist of most of it, and it did drop out a couple of times internet-wise. So I have got some questions, and apologies if you did cover them. I'll go straight to participants first. I've got a question from Kat. So, morning, Kat. Thanks for forwarding a question. Daryl, Kat asks, is it just new products that are eligible to be claimed on? Could they claim for researching and developing new ways to deliver their current services? They work in brand communications, if that helps.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a brand new product. So it could be an existing product where we're trying to just make it better. So it almost comes down to being like a process improvement. So we made it this way, or out of this kind of material in the past. Now we actually want to make it. It's cost us too much money to do that. We need to reduce overhead. So we're looking at making it in a new and different way. So as long as that making it a new and different way, or trying a different strategy, involves moving, advancing the technology in some way, and it will still should be eligible to claim. Everything ties back to it has to be advancing science or technology in some way. So as long as it's not just like a business idea, new innovative idea of how you.
Great. Emily, so just to introduce yourself, please.
So I work in the radio team with Daryl. I joined last June, straight from uni. So I'm not obviously as experienced as Daryl, but I think I can help with answering a few questions. So as Daryl was saying, like as long as that does advance the overall sector and not just your company, that shouldn't be an issue. But Daryl would be more than happy to have a call with you just to confirm that is a definite.
Thanks, Emily. I've got Daryl just rejoining now on his iPhone, so hopefully this should be better.
He's back.
Just connecting, just bear with us. Hi, Daryl, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, so yeah, man, that crashed on me. So on mobile seems to be a bit better.
Okay, no problem. So Emily jumped on and answered Kat's question for you. But Kat has asked if it would be possible to speak to you following the webinar about a project. I said that wouldn't be a problem. You'd be more than happy to speak to anybody following the webinar. I'll share your contact details.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fine.
I've got another question from Trish. Trish asks, if they've got two projects, do we have to keep the financial information for the claim separate?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if you can identify the costs in each individual project, it makes it better. Generally, if you haven't claimed before and we're looking retrospectively at a claim, if we've just got costs covering both projects, that's fine. But I think ideally then moving forward, you'd want to try and keep it project specific if you could identify it, depends on the size of the company and how good the record keeping processes are within the business. Sometimes it's quite good just to set up like an R&D nominal ledger code and allocate costs there. So either's fine, but HMRC would, if you could do it more accurately, then I'd have it per individual project.
And Daryl, sorry if you did cover it, you did mention that once receiving an application, HMRC turn it around in 28 days. But how long does it take to prepare a claim on average?
Yeah, well, we've done claims in 2 days, but it just depends on how good we can get the information from the company and from the accountants, and particularly if we're not their accountants, which is probably the case for at least half of the people we do R&D claims for. So sometimes it's just getting that financial information from the accountant or their payroll team or the FD. It just depends. But it's a fairly quick process. So in terms of, we normally go out and talk to the technical people to get the technical information about projects. That's normally a 2-hour meeting. We then go back and prepare everything, and then it's just getting that data. So yeah, we can do it in a couple of days, but we have to take 3 months because we just can't get the information out of people, or it's not top priority within the company to do it. We're finding at the minute, because lots of companies have shut down or furloughed staff, the FDs and directors have got a bit more time on their hands now they've dealt with the immediate emergencies. So they're suddenly finding time to actually, they've got a bit of time to spend on doing the R&D claim with us. That's been quite useful. But yeah, it's anything. But in terms of company time, we probably need 2 or 3 hours of their time. We do the rest of it. We can do it pretty quickly.
Daryl, I've just had a question from Josh. Josh, I'm not sure if Daryl can see the questions on his iPhone or not. So if it's okay, I'm going to unmute you. And Josh, if you want to just try speaking. Josh, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's great. Josh, do you want to ask your question directly to Daryl?
Yeah, certainly. So there's a couple of aspects to it. The first was can time spent working, or technically I think it's classed as volunteering, for British Standards Institute on their committees, or ISO, the International Standards Organisation committees, can that be included? I work in the environment and sustainability sector in a micro consultancy.
So I didn't quite hear the question. It sort of broke up.
Josh, your internet sounds like it's having issues as well, so I will relay the question myself. So Daryl, Josh asked, can time spent working in British Standard Institute technical committees and ISO committees be included? Josh Fothergill, working environment and sustainability.
Not normally. It's not, because working in very sort of like, I suppose, accredited industries. So they might form part of a development in terms of these are the standards we need to get to, which is where we need to be. But the R&D relief is about, well, the R&D activity starts when you've identified your technical challenge and you start to resolve a technical challenge. So normally that's pre that kind of area of work. So it might help you form part of the research, I suppose. I wouldn't generally tend to think of that as being an R&D activity. It's the actual core activity of resolving the technical challenges, trying to make that advance, but qualifying that R&D activity.
Josh also asks, how does it work if you've had an innovation grant? So they've won a couple of small innovation grants from a US-based professional association. How does that affect an R&D claim?
Okay, yeah, so grants will affect the claim. So it depends on who it's from, but if it's for instance, like an Innovate UK grant or an Innovate UK loan is notified state aid, and the EU competition rules say you can't have more than one form of state aid for any one R&D project, and an R&D tax credit is also notified state aid. So what it means is that if it was notified state aid, like an Innovate project, or that particular project, you wouldn't be able to claim under the Small Medium Enterprises scheme, but you could claim the other scheme that they have, called the Research and Development Expenditure Credit Scheme. So it's nowhere near as advantageous as the SME scheme, but roughly you get about 10% back of the R&D spend on top of the grant. So you can still claim, but if an SME claim, if you haven't got any grant funding, you roughly get about 25% of your R&D spend back in tax relief, whereas if you had a grant, it's just under 10%. So you can do them, but it's just identifying who his grant's been paid by. So if it was from some US body, you'd have to have a look at whether it is notified state aid or not. It might be that you could claim the part that's covered by the grants, you have to claim under the other scheme, and the bit that's funded by yourself over and above the grant funded elements, you could claim under your SME scheme still. So say it does get a bit complex. We just have to look at documentation. I think quite often the grants will quite often be more money than what the R&D tax relief will be. So most of the time it's worthwhile still receiving the grant, unless it's a really small grant. Then it could be maybe not so advantageous, but we'd have to look at it. Again, if Josh wants a cut chat with me afterwards, that's fine. I can talk him through it.
Well, thanks, Darryl. Josh, hopefully that answered both parts to your question. Just, Darryl, how far can you go back to claim?
Yeah, so it's two years. 2 years you can go back. So, like I said, if you were an April year end at the minute, coming up to 30th of April this month, you'd have until the 30th of April 2020 to get a claim in. So you'd have 2 weeks to do a claim. So it's those 2 years, and it's the same for any other tax relief. So R&D is no different. If you want to claim any kind of tax, 2 years to make a claim. Capital allowances is another one that we see quite a lot of.
And sorry if you did cover it. Is there a cap on how much you can claim?
No, there's no cap. Well, there is a cap. So it's 7.5 million euros for in any year for one project. I've never come across any companies that we work with that have had more than £7.5 million of state aid for any kind of project. But some large companies will do for sure, but not locally that we work with.
Okay, I think we're probably going to wrap it up there, unless any of the participants have any final questions for Darryl while we've got him. Just conscious that internet's been a bit of an issue this morning, so apologies everybody. Thanks for bearing with us. Darryl, thanks for jumping back on and managing to get through the call one way or another. Perhaps it's best that I just share Darryl's contact details now with everybody that's on the call, and you can pick things up directly with him. It's probably going to be easier that way. So no final questions have come through. Darryl, just want to thank you for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. Really informative. Thanks everybody for joining the call. I will share Darryl's contact details, and please keep an eye out for future webinars. We've got a busy week of webinars next week. Sheffield Chamber, we've got 4 webinars next week looking at communication strategies, steps to help you survive and thrive, health and well-being of your employees. Yeah, some good webinars that are up on the Chamber's events calendar. So hope to see you on them next week. So thanks for your time, everybody. Have a nice day. Bye.